welcome to the New Orleans Drawing Group. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have Hilarie Couture coming and speaking about her work. She is an artist that works in several media, in oil, pastel, mixed media, and others in addition. Drawing from an early age, she was a hair designer for 40 years, studied historic building preservation, which led her to return to her art. She started very young, which she might want to talk about, drawing. She used to draw all the time in some real interesting, all different situations. She's represented now by the Attic Gallery in Camas, Washington, and Gallery K in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Recently a demonstrator in Pastel Live. She is a workshop instructor at 3M Fine Art and at her own gallery studio in Fort Wayne. And I just wanted to tell you, I met her at the International Association of Pastel Societies this past June, and I loved her spunk and energy and can do for any task that she was asked to do, helping out there. And beside her work, I love the color, the energy, and some of the thoughts behind it. So I am just going to turn this over to Hilarie, and thank you so much for joining us and all the people that are here to also listen. If you have any questions, you can just interrupt if you want. Okay, Hilarie, welcome.
Thank you, Sandra. Thanks, everyone. This is really an honor for me to be here tonight. And I thought about doing a demo, but I actually did one today on Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. So I figured if you wanted to see me do a demo, you could watch that because they record all of those on YouTube. And I have 2 of them on there now. So feel free. But I actually have a little image here that I did. So this is a pastel, but this was my demo today. And so I thought I would kind of go into my background a little bit and then show you some of my work. And that's the plan for the evening. And please feel free to interrupt at any time and ask questions. Yes, Playboy started in the 50s, and that was my era as well. The reason I'm showing Playboy is because when I was 2 years old, my dad used to have these Playboy magazines on the coffee table. And I'd open them up and I'd see these naked ladies, and I got a purple crayon and I started drawing clothes on them because I thought they were cold. And my dad said, well, I just buy them from the articles, but then all of a sudden they disappeared. And this is what I had. Does anyone remember John Nagy Learn to Draw? It was a syndicated program in the 50s. And it was on, I think, Sunday mornings, and it was on my black and white TV. And every Sunday morning, faithfully, I'd get my little John Nagy kit out and I would draw with him. So the first things I drew were ballet dancers and horses. This is Degas, and that's Degas. And then Margaret Keanes became famous, and she drew the Sad-Eyed Kids. And so I didn't come from a very good upbringing. My family life was not the best, and I would go in the closet, and I was a sad-eyed kid, and I would draw these sad-eyed kids in pieces of paper in my closet. And then in grade school, all the girls wanted me to draw paper dolls for them, and I was happy to draw the paper dolls and the clothes, but I told them they had to color the clothes themselves. I didn't want to color them. Fast forward into high school, and this was the kind of art that was popular then. And then I went 1 year to Washington U in St. Louis because I wanted to be a medical illustrator. And this is Louise Nevelson's work, but my first project, I had one drawing and one design class, and then everything else was pre-med and physiology and physics and all these pre-med courses. And I was taking 22 hours and working on campus, and it was a lot. But one of my first projects was a design project, and the girl that got the top grade did something similar to this. She put a doll in a box and took the head off and took the arms off and had them just hanging out in the box and spray painted all the parts white. And I couldn't understand how that could be art. Because who I really liked was Chuck Close, who was a photorealist. The first one was what he was doing in the 60s and 70s. And then this is the second image on the right is his more recent work right before he passed away. And then I quit school after a year and a half and hitchhiked out to San Francisco. And I met a Buddhist lady who made puka shell necklaces on the streets. And she said, oh, you really should get a street artist license and then you can sell your portraits on the streets. And I thought, well, that'd be a great idea. But all my portraits sadly look like that. The sad-eye kids. Then I met a woman in New Orleans, or from New Orleans, who was a street artist. And she said, if you really want to get good, you need to move to New Orleans. She had me sit for her, and she did my portrait. It was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. And so I was convinced in 2 weeks I moved to New Orleans. And then I traveled up the East Coast with another artist, and he found somebody that he wanted to stay with. And so I ended up going to New York by myself. And then I traveled down to Kansas City for the Republican convention because I thought I was going to draw portraits on the streets there. And I had a little car accident. So I went back to Omaha, Nebraska, where I was born. And I thought, well, I'll just set up and do portraits on the streets. And I met a woman named Karen Donahoe, and she was a hairdresser, and she had this kind of hair, and I really wanted to draw her. And I asked her if she would sit for me and she could be my shill, and then I would get people to gather around, and that would start my day to make a living as a portrait artist. But Karen had an appointment at 1 o'clock, and she said, how about if we trade a haircut for a portrait? And I said, that'd be great. We got together. So she gave me a haircut, and that was the haircut I had, a beret. And I did 2 portraits of her. And then fast forward, this is my historic preservation. At 55, I went back to college. And after doing hair for about 46 years, actually, and I thought, I'm going to get a degree. And so I went to school for historic preservation because I really wanted to do interior design, but they didn't have that kind of degree at the school. So this chair was a project that I did for my final thesis project. I created a table and chairs. I actually sort of recycled one that my grandmother had given us that had turquoise vinyl seats, and it was white, and then it had a delaminated top that was kind of a pickled wood look. So this became the chairs after I did them. And this was the table. So I took salvage pieces of stained glass, and I had a 36-inch glass top, and I just started forming these pieces of glass around the top, and then I poured resin over it. And that's the final table after it was complete. And I still have it. And that was the set.
Hilarie, question.
Yeah.
When you say you did hair, I first thought you were saying that you were a hairdresser. Is that what?
Yes. Yes, I was a hairdresser.
Oh,
for
okay. All right.
46 years about.
Okay.
Yeah, can't you tell by looking at me that I used to be a hairdresser? Anyway, so then we had a final project that we had to do for one of my classes in this historic preservation degree. And we had to we had like a fake room scene that we had to strip wallpaper off of. And then we had to replaster the wall. And then the teacher said, I want you to do a diptych that would fit the era of the room that you're designing. Well, I hadn't painted in years. And so this was one of the panels I did. I really loved Maxfield Parrish. And so that was the influence I had there. And then this was the other panel. And this piece actually won second place in the competition that we had at the college. So I was pretty excited. And my instructor came up and he said, "You're a hairdresser?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "And you're a realtor?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "And you're an auctioneer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you've missed your calling." And I thought, well, I'm not dead yet. I'm still vertical. So maybe I need to look at doing art. And then this is my husband. So I thought I'm going to try my hand at portraits again because it had been over 40 years since I'd drawn and painted or did anything like that. And when he got up to look at the portrait, he got tears in his eyes and he said, "This is what you really need to be doing." So I also, because of that little panel, I entered it in a competition in my town to get a free art booth at one of the big festivals. And there I am drawing portraits at the festival. And this was my first oil painting. And I had no background at all. This was my second oil painting, and that's my grandma. Not really knowing what I'm doing. And this was the first oil painting that I sold. And I was really excited that somebody actually wanted to buy my work. And then I started doing series. I started thinking about it. And this was a series of women and their spirit animals. And I did 12 of them. And then I made a calendar. And so this is one of them. And it was a woman who she loved wolves. That was her spirit animal. And I finished the painting and I said, "Well, I have your painting done. Would you like to see it?" And she said, "Oh no, I meant to tell you, I'm a Gemini and I wanted 2 wolves in the painting." Well, I painted 2 wolves in the painting and didn't even know that that's what she wanted. Then I started another project. And this was when I lived in Vancouver, Washington. I decided to paint women that had made contributions to the community. This was, I thought I would do about 20 of them because I had 5 months to do this project. And I ended up doing 53. And this was the first one I did. And she was deceased, but most of them came to my studio and posed live for me for about 90 minutes. And that was my painting of her. And then this gal, we really had a time because she was sort of prominent in the community. And when she came to my studio, I had the newspaper reporter there too. And she was so busy talking to the reporter that she wasn't giving me any contact at all. And being artists, that if you don't have rapport with your model, it's really tough to get a good likeness. And she hated the painting. And that's the painting. But I thought it sort of looked like her pretty well. She hated it. And there I am painting her, as you can see. This was another one that I did. Whoops, and that's the painting. And then this was another one, and that was her painting. And this was one of the walls as I was installing the work. This was at the opening. And then COVID happened. And many of you probably know Portrait Artist of the Year. It's a program from London. And during COVID, they would televise and then anybody could participate in it. But it's a really great program if you haven't seen it. I think it's on Netflix or whatever, but several artists are chosen to paint different models. There's 9 artists that participate, and each room has 3, and then, or 3 or 4, and then a model. But this was one of the guys that was on TV when they had that. And then my gallery said that I could have a show in my first solo show in May of 2020. Well, guess what? That was COVID, big time. But this was one of the paintings I did. It was kind of a tribute to Klimt, who's one of my favorite artists. I experimented. This is an oil painting, but I started doing things where I sort of transposed landscapes into figures. And this one I sold right away, which I was excited about. And then this is a pastel with the same technique. And then when I moved to Fort Wayne, I decided that I wanted to try to get more known in the community here. And so I put together a project where I was painting people from diverse backgrounds that moved to Fort Wayne, and many of them didn't even speak English yet when they came here. And this was the first one that I was painting in the studio. And I ended up painting, I think it was 53 of those. And I had an opening that was an unveiling. So the show was at a library gallery, a really nice gallery. And I asked the curator if I could drape each one of the paintings and have them hidden. And then I asked my subjects to come in the same clothing. So this gal was from Libya, but they all wore ethnic clothing. And I interviewed them and I asked them 3 questions about, how did they come to Fort Wayne? What did they miss about their country? What was the hardest thing to adjust to? Things like that. And I videotaped it, and then I created a QR code, and then I put that on all the title cards. So when people looked at the exhibit, they could watch the interviews at the same time. They were short interviews. And so when they showed up, when all my subjects showed up, they stood in front of their paintings. I called their name in order, and they stood in front of their paintings, and the paintings were draped. And then I dropped the drape on the wall, and they all turned around and got to see the paintings for the first time with the guests that came to the opening. And it was really emotional. And then I created a book to go along with it that just documented. It was like a exhibition booklet, but everybody was running around having the book signed by each one of the people. And one of the girls from Venezuela came up to me and she said, "Hilarie, this is the first time I've ever felt seen." And that really touched me. So these are some of the finished pieces. This one actually has pearls on it. It was oil and mixed media. And then the writing is Libyan writing, and it says something about the land of heather, the heather, the flowers. But anyway, I sewed these pearls into the canvas too.
Yeah.
And this this is a guy from El Salvador, and this is a guy from Chile. So they would come to my studio for 90 minutes. We would do the interview. I would paint them from life, and then we would talk about something significant to them, and then I would create the background. So this happens to be his country. Whoops. Try to find that. There it is. And then this guy he and his wife were both Holocaust survivors. And he wrote a book about his experience, which was pretty interesting. And then this one has LED lights. This guy's from Saudi Arabia. And if you can see the little purple dots in the bottom there, so it turns on and off. So you can have it day or night. It's a night light and it's a painting.
That's great.
This is a guy from Yemen. And this is a guy, he was Chinese American, Jewish, and gay. So a lot of stuff about him. And this guy was a riot. He was from Togo, and their customs are quite different. But his interview is really funny because he said that they couldn't touch somebody with their left hand, and he drove to a fast food place and they wanted him to pay. And so, you know, the window's on the left side, and he said, "Oh, I can't touch you on the left hand." And she couldn't understand why he wouldn't take the change back on his left hand. And it's because something about that's the hand that they wipe themselves with or something. But this was what he was saying in his interview. So it was really funny. But anyway, that was mixed media too with oil. And this lady was 92, and I went to her house, and she was from Syria, and she was great. And this gal, she was Korean, and I put her mother in the painting with her because they both actually left their country at about the same age. And her mother moved to Germany to help during the war as a nurse. And Suan, the daughter, ended up coming to the States, and they were both about 19 when they came. And that just is kind of she was just telling me the story. And so this was what I created after I heard her story. And this guy was from Burkina Faso, I think it was. And I loved his costume. And this guy was from Egypt, and I did an overlay. This is a pastel, and I did an overlay sort of some things from his country in the background. Whoops, I did it again. This is a guy from Nigeria, and he played this drum, and I couldn't decide which picture I wanted to use because I started painting him from life, but then I took so many great pictures of him that I just put them all together, and this is in oil. This gal was from Burma. There's several different sects of Burmese people, and she was the Mon Burmese. And this gal was from Colombia, but she was representing Canada. This is pastel. The last one was oil. And that's a self-portrait in pastel. And then this is a little bit about the process. So I'm very random when I start working. So you can kind of see I just have these blocky shapes. And then I added an alcohol underpainting to that. And that's getting a little, I guess that's the finish, but so it does work out eventually, but it starts out really scary. And then this is another oil painting with that same overlaying idea. It's kind of like she's looking through lace curtains. And this is, oh, sorry. This is another one where I added LED lights, but this was before I got smart. And then I started putting the wires in the back so you didn't see the wire anymore. But I did several with this idea. And this is oil, acrylic. There's some gold leaf on there, and then the LED lights. And this was a little pastel. Oh, I think my computer is so sensitive. There I am. This one I added peacock feathers. This is oil. And this one I put stained glass in it. So it's oil on a panel with stained glass pieces. Like she was looking through it was a church window. This is one of my pastels. So I'm really into eras, if you haven't figured that out yet. So this gal came over and she had the 50s look. And this one won Best of Show in a local competition, and now it's in the Lieutenant Governor's office in Indianapolis. It was chosen for that, and it's a pastel. And another pastel. I love painting from life. So this was a solo show I had, and she was my model. And then I thought I'd put a few figurative pieces in. So this is one of the figurative pastels. And then this one, also pastel. Also pastel. This one actually was published in Pratique des Arts. It's a French publication, and they had a special pastel issue in 2020, I believe. And I show all my steps in the magazine. That was a big honor to have an article in there, 6-page article. And then this is an oil that won a Best of Show competition. This is a watercolor, and this is actually the one that I'm taking to the museum tomorrow. That's my husband. That's a pastel. Whoops, sorry. I entered that in I think it was IAP's competition, and it got rejected, but I like it.
What was he holding there?
A Leinenkugel. We were at a concert, and we were both enjoying some liquid refreshments. This one is pastel. And that's a pastel. That was also a reject. So, you win a few, you lose a few. That was a reject just recently. And I thought that was a pretty nice painting, but pastel.
Hilarie, what size do you typically work, and what surfaces?
Oh, well, different things. Like this was ampersand board, and it's an 18 by 24. And then the next one is a 12 by 18 pastel on UArt, probably 400. This one got rejected from one of the competitions too. Seems like the ones I like always get rejected. I don't know. And this is a 12 by 18 pastel on UArt. Oops. This is also a pastel. I gotta make these bigger. Are you seeing them, Teeny?
Yes,
Does that help?
that's better.
Yeah. So I really love trying to capture light and energy and movement. This was actually when I lived in Washington, and it was in one of the national parks. So beautiful. Pastel. And this is also a pastel. That one actually got accepted and was an award winner, and I sold it. So it's a pastel, but I originally did a photo shoot. Actually started painting him from life. He was playing the flute in a park, and I asked him if I could paint him, and then I took pictures, and the first painting was I think it was 3 by 5 feet on a panel, and it won Best of Show in one of my local competitions. And then I put it in a gallery, and it sat there for 3 years and never sold. And then somebody ended up buying it, and then the gallerist called me up and said, "Can you paint another 2 of those? Because now everybody wants that painting now that it's gone." So I said, "Well, I'll try, but they won't look the exact same." So I did 2 more oils, and then I did, this is a little different version of it, but I did this one in pastel. So that one was 12 by 18 as well on UArt. This is a little oil painting, 12 by 12. And this one is the one that is now in the PSA show. And I call it Red. Oh, that was it. I guess you didn't want to see it anyway, right?
Can we
I
see?
call it, I think we got it here. Yeah, I was really excited because it's my first acceptance in a PSA show. And she was a beautiful model, a young girl with this beautiful porcelain skin, and it was sort of an overcast day. And so there was a lot of ambient light, and I was really working on the mark making and trying to get the different cool and warm tones in her skin. And that's that one.
Lovely. Congratulations on your acceptance into that
Acceptance.
show.
I know, I was really excited. Thank you. And then that was the end, showing my grubby paintbrushes.
Hilarie, I think your work is wonderful. I'm really interested in what you did with the portraits of the immigrants from your town.
Oh, well, that's an interesting thing. So several of the people so for 2 years after that show, I loaded them up every 6 weeks and took them to a different venue so that they would be on display, and they would be like a community outreach for other people to see and be aware of and be able to watch the interviews. And I had books available. I still have books available, but yeah, so they traveled around. I loaded up my car and took 53 paintings to all these places for 2 years. And then I offered them for sale for less than half price to anybody that was in the project that wanted their painting. So I sold maybe out of 53, I probably sold half of them. And I still have a few of them, but I've been painting over them. Because it's like, what do you do with all these portraits? And so, yeah, I've created some new works on top of these old pieces. And sometimes I let some of the old work pop through, and it really is interesting. So if you haven't ever tried that, I recommend it.
It's a
Don't
great-
gesso over it, or, don't put an oil primer over it, but just go ahead and start right in, and you never know what unexpected thing would come up that you can find into a new painting. Sometimes those happy accidents happen.
Hilarie,
really-
how did you connect with the individuals that were in that project?
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because I was sort of new in Fort Wayne. And after I proposed this idea, because I got the show set up at the library gallery, and then I thought, how am I going to meet these people? Because I don't know anyone. So I started going to community events that had immigrants present and meeting people and asking them if they would be interested in participating in the project. And then when they came to my studio, I'd say, do you know anyone else that might be interested? And I didn't want to repeat any of the countries, except if I could have a male and a female from the same country, that was okay. So I think maybe I had 3 that were the same country. I had a male and female from Mexico, and a male and female from there was another place, but actually most of them were unique. And some of these cultures I was just amazed at, because I didn't even, like Kyrgyzstan. Who would have thought somebody was here in Fort Wayne that was from Kyrgyzstan? I didn't even know where it was. I had to look it up on an atlas because I had no idea where Kyrgyzstan was. But yeah, so that was part of it. And then I would have Zoom interviews with these people so that I could see them and meet them and explain it to them. And then we set up appointments, and it was like a full-time job. I was booking people, like 2 a day, and I was a busy bee for about a year. Well, no, let's see. I started the project in February, and my opening was October, but I had to have everything done by the end of August for the YWs, or the YMCA wanted to have a program for oh, I can't think of the name of it, but it's an event that they have every year. And so they asked me if my portraits would be done for that. And so, yeah, we had to have them photographed in August for that. And then my grand opening was October 1st. So, and then I did all the framing myself. And so, oil paintings have to dry and have to be varnished. So a lot of strategic planning went into that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like diving in with both feet. Hilarie, Karen Horn just put a question in the chat for you.
Oh,
She says, these community projects are so touching. How did you fund these shows and make them happen? You're so resourceful.
I funded it pretty much with my own dollar. Like I said, I paint over old paintings. So, I had a few old paintings that I painted over, and I recycled frames. And then I actually, there's a community group that I partnered with, and it's called Amani, and they help people to get acclimated into the community. And so I sort of worked with them, and I wrote a grant and asked them if they would sponsor me, and I got $3,000 from that. But then they took like 20% of it because they could. And so, basically it was my own dollar. And then what did I get? 2,400, I guess. So, yeah. But driving them to all these different places all over the region, that was my gas, my time. I was hanging a lot of those shows, but I really wanted to introduce these people to different communities. So we also had some panel discussions where I invited them, to speak on stage about their experience coming to this country and, settling in, and some of the wonderful things and some of the not so wonderful things about adjusting. So it was a lot. It was a big exhibit, and it was rewarding in many ways for not just me, but a lot of people, I think.
Oh, kudos to you. It's an important cultural opportunity that you created.
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you. Yeah, it was just going to that reception and seeing how thrilled people were with, their paintings, and running around with the book and having other people sign the book. And it was really neat.
So do you still have books?
I do. Yeah, I ordered, like, it was like print on demand, and I ordered 100 first, and then I went through those and I thought, well, I'll order another 100, and now I think I still have about 50. If you're interested, they sell for $20 and I'll ship it.
It just seems like such a wonderful project that could be done in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
Got almost a universal appeal. And right now, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I was so enlightened hearing a lot of their stories, and, I mean, we all have stories, but some of these people, the things they had to go through, just like, leaving their country because of the spoils of war. And I mean, I had a guy from the Ukraine, and it was right after the war broke out, and yeah, some of the Burmese people that are, I mean, they're still looking for their homeland. So, yeah.
So
Hillary,
what's next for you?
Well, I have an ongoing show right now. I opened, let's see, when was that? The end of August. And it was, I think it's about 76 paintings of different eras of time. And again, at my opening, I gave people the option when they came to the reception if they wanted to dress in their favorite era that they could. And so I was in Victorian clothes, kind of Belle Epic was my thing, because I really love that era. I should have been born then. And but yeah, that was that project. And I'm now teaching in a university, which is really great because I'm self-taught and I don't have a degree. And I'm an adjunct professor at a university. And it's because of my
It's great.
yeah, I guess my experience, yeah, I guess. The dean of the art department saw my work in a local show, and I had won an award on all the pieces that I entered, and I entered 4 different mediums, and all the pieces got an award, which I was just shocked because the year before I was getting rejected from everything. So I want to tell you to persevere because sometimes it pays off. But yeah, he saw my work and I had an interview, and I was retired. I'm 69, so I was retired for about 9 years actually, and now I'm teaching college beginning oil painting, so I'm loving it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Karen Horn has another message for you. She says, what an amazing contribution to the immigrants and your communities. How has your experience doing hair influenced the way you approach portraiture?
Well, as a hairdressers kind of touch people the way nobody else does. And I think just having that closeness to people, I mean, when I was a hairdresser, people would tell me things that they wouldn't tell anyone else. And when I was a hairdresser, I match made 4 couples. I was a Zelda, a Yenta, and like the guys would come in and tell me all these things, and then women would come in and they were single and they would tell me all these things, and I think, I think these people would get along great with each other. And so I set them up on a blind date, and then I married off 4 different couples. But it's the I think it's just like the ability to communicate in a different way. You touch people, and then cutting hair, it's like sculpting. So you have this mass, and you have to create something out of it, but you can't just make a pretty hairstyle. It has to go with that person's features and their lifestyle, and so many things that I think that all attributes to my portraiture, and also the fact that in hair coloring, even when I teach color theory, you know, I go back to my hair coloring, and that was my first understanding of, you know, color theory, because in coloring hair, it's exactly the same. You know, the hair has dye molecules, pigment molecules, and when you put a chemical on it, it changes. But as it goes lighter, and when I teach, like in a value scale, a lot of the teachers say that one is black, and or they say one is white and 9 is black, but I go the opposite way, because in hair coloring, and it just depends on how you learn it, but you could go either way. But in hair coloring, the lightest colors were in the level 9s, which were the real light blondes. And so that was easy for me to remember, you know, the light being level 9 and then the dark being level 1. And in hair color, it's the same thing. And like if you wanted to cancel out brassy tones, you use the opposite. So I understood complements, and yeah, so it all relates. And even when I think about atmospheric perspective, because red is the longest wavelength, but it's usually the closest it comes forward. And then as you go back in space, it's blue. And so red is the hardest color to remove, but it doesn't hold as well as any other color. And blue is the first thing that comes out when you bleach. So blue is the furthest back. I don't know if this is making sense to any of you, but I think, you know, blue is as the furthest back because it's the first one that leaves when you start to bleach hair. And then it goes blue, red, and then yellow. So yeah, there was quite a bit of that that relates to the portraiture, and just getting to know people on a real personal basis. When I do portraits, people tell me that I used to say that I captured souls or whatever, because I never really thought about it, but I guess I pull their spirit out, or I try to. Well, I don't even think I try, but somehow it happens. I really more or less concentrate on shapes, but I think that, you know, trying to create the right hairstyle for someone, it's kind of the same thing. And it's not just, you know, the good hair style, but it's the lifestyle, and it's what looks good on that person. So yeah.
What Karen
Okay.
Horn just said, you experiment so freely and use so many different painting media, plus mixed elements. It's really impressive.
Oh,
And the words I was just going to use, that you're, in addition to your life having so many experiences that combine to make you who you are in your own unique way, not having the traditional college, you know, courses, and your freedom to put stained glass on a canvas or pearls or lights, and just that you're like fearless also in trying new things. I'm in such awe of that. And in addition to your really caring about other people and their backgrounds, and that's not really that's somewhat rare nowadays. So it's you're all around. There's this, I don't know why I'm saying, there's this Yiddish word, a mensch. You're
yeah.
a mensch, in that you've done so many things well in your own way, and that should be well honored and respected.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Well said, Sandra.
it's beautiful.
Does anyone else, we're at that bewitching hour of 9. Anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. I also want to say how impressed I am with, I mean, I'm amazed how prolific you are and how versatile, and I'm wondering with all the different media that you use, how do you decide, when you're going to do a portrait, how do you decide if it's going to be an oil or a pastel or watercolor or whatever?
Sometimes it just tells me what it should be. It's funny, like the one of the lady that's the watercolor. I knew that it had to be a watercolor. It just because of that light popping, it just needed to be a watercolor. And I don't know, I just if sometimes it's like, well, I won't have enough time to paint it in oil, so I'll do a pastel because I can knock that out quicker. And it doesn't take time to dry. Sometimes it's that simple, but many times it's just the subject just tells me what it needs to be. I don't know. And I like to experiment. I'm a pack rat, so I collect all this stuff and I got to use it in my art. I mean, I put I did a painting in my show of the decades, and it's from the 50s, and avocados are wrapped in that green netting stuff. And so I put that green netting on her hat, and then I covered the whole painting in resin. And so it's a 1950s look, and she's got this little pillbox hat and this green, the netting from the avocado when you buy avocados at Costco. And so that's in the painting, but it works pretty good. And then I have an old 1950s clip-on earring on her ear, and then the whole thing is covered in resin. So yeah, I just have fun. Why not?
I think Dottie raised her hand to ask a question. Is that so, Dottie?
Yes. Hi, Hilarie. Your work and your story is amazing. Thank you. At the beginning of your talk, you talked about a demo and how we could watch the demo. Where was that again?
Oh, Eric Rhodes Art School Live on YouTube. He plays these, he televises Monday through Friday, and it's always at noon Eastern. And he'll have every different medium and different artists come on, and they do a demo or a talk or whatever. So they asked me, I was so thrilled. I think it was like the first week of September that I got to do it with Eric Rhodes, and I did a demo, and I called it Painting the Poetic Portrait. And I did it on UArt, and I did an underpainting, by using an alcohol wash. And so when I did today's, I did a fibrous paper substrate and just a direct painting rather than doing any kind of underpainting. And then I wanted to show backlighting and how that affects skin tones and the temperature, having the light around the back, and your skin tones look totally different because of that. So that was what I was demonstrating today. But yeah, you can tune in and see what you think.
Okay, so it's live at noon Eastern.
Every day. Yeah, every day at noon on YouTube, and it's called Eric Rhodes Art School Live. And then
Great.
after somebody does it, then they have an archive of all the programming that they do. And so you can just go in, like put the person's name in or whatever, and then watch it. But mine was today, so it's probably pretty easy to find it, or just,
Great.
put my name in and you'll find it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I want to thank you. And Dottie, you have another question or no?
No, I
Yes.
wanted to put my hand down.
This
It's
was
okay.
so wonderful. Hilarie just came back from a trip in France for about a week and a half. When did you come back?
I came back Tuesday night, and then I taught at the college Wednesday. I still haven't unpacked my suitcase because then I founded the Premier Pastel Society of Indiana. So I had a meeting with my Pastel Society last night. And then today I was asked to do this art school live, so I did that. And then I was asked to do this, so I've done this. Yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind because I have a little jet lag still, but I'm starting to come back to myself. But yeah.
If I had your energy
Amazing.
and you saying it's jet lagged, man, I would just like to have your jet lagged energy. That's what I.
Me too.
Well, you all give me energy, so.
We want to thank you very, very much, and get some sleep and unpack whenever. Just keep your free spirit going.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it, and I'll try to join you again. My husband usually works, he has a crazy schedule, and when he has to get up at 4:30, then I usually have to make dinner, and so this is a bad time. But when he works nights, then I'm free, so I could do it, and he had to work nights tonight, so
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much. This was
Hillary.
wonderful.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you. It was
Thank
Thank
wonderful.
you so much.